In the year 2081, everyone had finally achieved complete equality. This equality wasn't just limited to being equal before the law or before God. It applied to every aspect of life. No one was smarter, more attractive, or stronger than anyone else. Everyone was the same in every way. This new reality was made possible by the 211th, 212th, and 213th Amendments to the Constitution, as well as the tireless efforts of agents from the United States Handicapper General. Kurt Vonnegut Jr. wrote a dystopian story called Harrison Bergeron, in which the central theme revolves around the nightmare of total equality. In this story, people weren't allowed to be more intelligent, attractive, or powerful than anyone else. The laws of equality were strictly enforced, and those who displayed any form of exceptional ability were forced to be handicapped. Attractive people had to wear masks that made them ugly. The intelligent wore earpieces emitting disruptive noises to interfere with their thinking, and those with strength were burdened with heavy weights. As a result, people began to dumb themselves down or hide their unique traits in fear of punishment. Equality was ultimately achieved, but it came at the cost of freedom and individuality. What one person saw as a utopia, others viewed as a dystopia. The philosopher G.K. Chesterton wrote, "When all are sexless, there will be equality. There will be no men or women. There will only be a fraternity, free and equal. The only comforting thought is that it will last for just one generation." This idea, which once seemed far-fetched, is becoming less and less unlikely in today's society. But what is driving the absurd promotion of equality? When we look deeper, one reason may be what Viktor Frankl refers to as the unheard cry for meaning that haunts modern society. The current era is defined by a profound sense of disorientation, with people unsure of how to give their lives purpose. The philosopher Nietzsche anticipated this trend, extensively writing about nihilism, a belief that arises from the death of God and the lack of higher values. Nietzsche saw this as a crisis of meaning, leaving us with no clear answers to our why. He famously wrote, "What were we doing when we unchained this earth from its sun? Whither is it moving now? Whither are we moving? Away from all suns? Are we not plunging continually? Backward, sideward, forward, in all directions? Is there still any up or down? Are we not straying as through an infinite nothing? God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? What was holiest and mightiest of all that the world has yet owned has bled to death under our knives. Who will wipe this blood off us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? What festivals of atonement? What sacred games shall we have to invent? Is not the greatness of this deed too great for us? Must we ourselves not become gods simply to appear worthy of it?" Nietzsche's proclamation of God's death is prophetic, as modernity has replaced God with public opinion and entertainment culture. Scientific rationality has advanced humanity, but at the expense of showing our insignificance in the universe, revealing that we are merely the product of evolution, a random accident in the great cycle of becoming and perishing, and that we should remain skeptical about the idea of God or the afterlife. We continue our daily routines until something shakes us, causing us to stop and ask ourselves, why? This is exactly what Albert Camus captures in The Myth of Sisyphus. Rising streetcar, 4 hours in the office or factory, meal, streetcar, 4 hours of work, meal, sleep, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, according to the same rhythm. This path is easily followed most of the time. But one day the why arises, and everything begins in that weariness tinged with amazement. Bishop Robert Barron explains that living a meaningful life isn't just about what you do. It's about having a purposeful connection to values like goodness, truth, and beauty. For him, Religious value comes from living in alignment with what's called the summum bonum, or the highest good. It's the foundation of everything that's good, true, and beautiful in the world, and for many people, God is the source of that. Unlike in the past, modern man isn't told what he should do by tradition or universal values anymore. Instead, he's at risk of falling into relativism, where there's no clear right or wrong, only the truths that each individual or culture believes in. This leads to a dangerous situation where everyone sees themselves as the center of the world. As a result, people start clashing against each other, with the strongest will often asserting itself and becoming authoritarian. This creates the perfect conditions for totalitarianism, where you're forced to do what others tell you, and conformism, where you just go along with what everyone else does, even if you don't believe it yourself. A great example of how human nature and social systems can create a totalitarian regime is found in George Orwell's Animal Farm. In the story, animals are treated harshly by humans. They eventually rise up and overthrow their masters. After their victory, they dream of a society where all animals are equal, free, and well-fed. But as time passes, the pigs, who are the most educated and well-read, start taking over as leaders. They preach equality for all and promise a utopian society, but over time, they grow more corrupt and begin abusing their power. Instead of equality, they create a dictatorship. The original slogan, "All animals are equal," eventually becomes, "All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others." This is a perfect example of how pushing total equality can actually lead to inequality. Orwell's Animal Farm is an allegory about human nature, and the central message remains relevant today. As G.K. Chesterton once wrote, "It is only by believing in God that we can ever criticize the government. Once abolish God, and the government becomes the God." And then there's Stephen Fry, who highlights an interesting contradiction in the modern liberal mindset. It's a strange paradox that the liberals are illiberal in their demand for liberality. They are exclusive in their demand for inclusivity. They are homogeneous in their demand for heterogeneity. They are somehow undiverse in their call for diversity. You can be diverse, but not diverse in your opinions and in your language and in your behavior. And that's a terrible pity. Nietzsche calls these individuals preachers of equality, who spread revenge and insult against those who aren't their equals. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche talks about these preachers of equality in a famous parable called On the Tarantulas. The tarantulas are symbolic of those who preach equality while secretly seeking revenge. "Look here, this is the hole of the tarantula. Do you want to see the tarantula itself? Its web hangs here. Touch it, make it tremble. Here it comes, willingly. Welcome, tarantula. On your back, your triangle and mark sits in black. And I know too what sits in your soul. Revenge sits in your soul. Wherever you bite, there black scabs grow. Your poison makes the soul whirl with revenge." Nietzsche uses this powerful image to expose the hypocrisy of those who claim to want justice and equality, but are driven by anger and a thirst for vengeance. These preachers of equality disguise their desire for revenge with lofty words about justice. But in reality, they want to punish anyone who isn't like them. He continues, "For justice speaks to me. Humans are not equal. And they shouldn't become so either. What would my love for the Overman be if I spoke otherwise?" Nietzsche, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Part 2. On the Tarantulas. In this passage, Nietzsche is saying that the preachers of equality, hidden behind their claims of justice, are nothing more than individuals seeking to spread revenge. His challenge is to reveal their true intentions, to expose their webs of deceit, and to show that the only path to true redemption is the release from the cycle of revenge. Nietzsche argues that these preachers of equality are essentially promoting an ideology of revenge, and their calls for justice are merely a disguise for their deeper desires to punish others who aren't like them. He believes that equality, as they see it, is rooted in resentment and is driven by a need to level everyone down to the same level, erasing all distinctions between individuals. Nietzsche says that these preachers of equality ultimately fail to recognize the individuality of people, and instead, they create an environment where no one stands out. He critiques this by explaining that equality of this kind leads to mediocrity and conformity, the opposite of true greatness. Nietzsche warns that such thinking eliminates the extraordinary, the strong, and the noble, all out of sheer spite. This, he argues, is a pathos of distance, where the gap between ordinary and extraordinary people is erased because of fear and resentment towards those who excel. This is the main critique Nietzsche has against the advocates of equality. They don't want the extraordinary, powerful, or unique to remain because they feel threatened by them. This idea of leveling is seen as the process of putting everyone on the same level, which fails to acknowledge the unique qualities and complexities of human identity. Nietzsche sees this as the ultimate flaw in egalitarianism. It is about stripping people of their individuality and distinctiveness in an effort to create a society where no one stands out. The result is a world where the extraordinary and remarkable are erased, and everyone is made to be the same, which ignores all the subtle complexities that make each person unique. Nietzsche's view of the last man represents the ultimate consequence of this leveling. The last man is someone who does not want to be different, who is perfectly content being just like everyone else. He is the embodiment of mediocrity, someone who is not striving for something greater or reaching for a higher goal. Instead, the last man is happy with being ordinary. Nietzsche sees this as the lowest possible point of human existence, a life of complacency and stagnation, where no one dares to be extraordinary or take any risks. This is the end result of a society that promotes equality to the extreme, where individuality is suppressed and everyone is made to be the same. Nietzsche warns that the last man is the symbol of decay in a society. This is not a world of growth, creativity, or excellence, but a place where everyone simply exists without striving for anything more than basic satisfaction. In this world of total equality, the extraordinary are erased, and with them, all the unique complexities of human identity. Nietzsche sees this as the death of human potential. It is a society where people have no desire for greatness, and where individualism is replaced by the comfort of mediocrity. This kind of society, Nietzsche argues, is the breeding ground for totalitarianism. When people are willing to give up their freedom and individuality for the sake of equality, they open the door for totalitarian regimes to rise. This is what George Orwell captured so well in his novel 1984, where he illustrated how a society of conformity can easily become a totalitarian state. In such a society, everything is controlled: thoughts, language, information, and individual freedom, until the unique identity of each person is completely eradicated.